Ryan, hi.
Hi, how
Thanks
are
for
you?
joining us. Good.
Yeah,
How are you?
yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having
First
me.
of all, I just want to thank you personally for coming on. I know you have the whole problem that so many of us have, which is like no childcare and kids, right? I mean, kids,
Yes,
it's,
yes,
yeah. So
but
if one
we're
runs
all
past or starts screaming, it's fine.
we're all muddling through. So
Well, in other good news, we're here to discuss your recent articles. Well, the Democratic Party machine is obviously difficult, if not impossible, to take on. There's this new group of progressives that you write about building the infrastructure to take on those mega donors and party bosses and get those fresh voices that we need so much in office, hopefully before an environmental catastrophe wipes us all out. The Intercept's Ryan Grim, which is you. You are here today to talk about how progressives in Delaware and Rhode Island, right down the street from where I currently sit, are setting the course for fellow organizations across the country. Ryan, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate it.
yeah, good to be here.
By the way, Ryan, you're the author of We've Got People and this other book that I'm sure you've already heard of or read. This is Your Country on Drugs. You may recognize Ryan from his work at The Intercept. Is that the most Friday introduction I've ever given you? I'm sorry. To me, this is my Friday, so I'm feeling very Friday. You're wearing a suit. I'm pretty much wearing pajama pants.
Exactly.
All right, let's get to it. Ryan, thanks again for being here. Talk about the progressives organizing in Rhode Island. What were the victories there, and how can we replicate them across the country?
Right. On the one hand, it kind of seems to be missing the scale to be talking about Rhode Island and Delaware insurgencies that are winning down ballot races. But on the other hand, if we're ever going to have a Democratic Party that is kind of muscular and capable of standing up to a threat like Donald Trump presents, then that transformation is going to have to take place at some point. And so, like you said, were two kind of different models that were undertaken in Delaware and Rhode Island. In Rhode Island, there was a very intentional and conscious effort on the part of a group of kind of veteran progressive activists in the state. One of them, Matt Brown, had run for governor in 2018, and decided that a better way of taking power was coming from the bottom up rather than going straight for the governor's mansion. He teamed up with some former state legislators and others who created this group called the Rhode Island Political Cooperative that went out and didn't do what a normal group does. Is they find candidates that are aligned with their positions. They may push them a little bit to get them where they want them to be, and then they offer an endorsement. And then after they've offered an endorsement, they offer a range of support, whether it's just saying that you're endorsed by us, all the way up to a giant independent expenditure that can fund television ads and recruit door knockers and text messengers and phone bankers, etc. What this cooperative did instead is it actually recruited a lot of these, or almost all of these candidates. Went out into the communities and found working class people that were ready to serve in public office, and then set up the infrastructure of campaigns for those people. Because what nobody talks about is how hard it is for a first-time candidate to actually figure out the mechanics of running for office. There's an entire industry of campaign consultants who just spend every day trolling new registration. So when a candidate, you can try it yourself, register to run for some office somewhere, and within a day or two, you're going to start getting phone calls from consultants who say, "Hey, I saw that you're running for the state house here in Rhode Island. I have an incredible record of winning elections, and if you just put me on retainer for X $1,000s a month, I'll make sure you get off and running." Often those consultants just walk away with all of this money without actually doing any work. And the hardest thing to do is to get off the ground as a candidate. And so instead, they spend their first 2 months of the campaign getting fleeced, not building any operation or apparatus. And then the media says, well, this is not a serious candidate. And once the media decides that you're not serious, it becomes impossible for you to get volunteers and to raise small dollars, and you're sunk. And so what this organization said, no, don't worry about any of these consultants that call you. Here are people that you can trust who are going to work for you, to get you up off the ground. Their actual mission here is to get you elected so that you can push forward a progressive agenda. And that,
the people were chosen by the organization, or they registered first and then the organization said, oh, this person seems very progressive?
Chosen. They would go around and find people that they knew from having come to demonstrations or through word of mouth. You should talk to my cousin. She's a nurse. She's extremely smart. She's passionate about politics, or she loved Bernie Sanders. What have you, and then try to talk those regular people into running for office. And when you tell people that, look, we'll help you walk through this complicated process, how to file, how to do mailers, how to talk to press, how to get a voter file so that you know who you need to reach, how to figure out what your win number is, the number of votes that you need. And the number of votes in these Rhode Island primaries was hilariously low. To knock out a 40-year incumbent, you might need 800, 700, 800 votes. If for a state Senate seat, it might be 2,000, 3,000 votes.
Ooh, I live in Connecticut, and I've always wanted to run for office. So these people should call me. I have a way with words, shall we say.
Well, there you go. I mean, I would expect that if, I don't know what kind of district you're in, but if it's a Democratic one and you won the primary, it would take you probably only 1,000 or 2 votes, to win a state house seat effectively. Now, Connecticut has more swing districts than Rhode Island.
I think I'm in a swing district.
Right. So then you'd have to raise a ton of money and fend off a Republican. And when you have to fend off a Republican, then you run into the problem of Democratic primary voters who say, you know what, I really agree with everything that you say, but I'm worried that the Republicans won't like you.
Right.
So we better go with this lame person.
Yeah. You'll just keep running year after year until you win, right? To build name recognition. I actually don't I just moved here, so I don't. What's the likelihood of people who just moved into an area winning a Senate seat in the state? It seems like you'd want to be here for a little while.
It depends. Because it's such an increasingly transient society that a lot of the people that are going to be voting in that election moved there fairly recently also. On the other hand, when you have a primary,
good point, especially where I am,
you have to go find those people, though, because in the primaries where you only have 2,000 people who turn out, often those 2,000 people have been there for a long time.
Right.
And
they know when the primary is.
They know where to vote. Right. And they know what the local issues are. So, if you're going to run on the local level, you also have to, be very serious about involvement in the local politics. Like Cynthia Mendez, who unseated the finance committee chair in Rhode Island, basically did it on the back of anger at him for supporting this project in the district and a project that his law firm or somebody that he was associated with was working on. And so it gets down to that kind of granular block level, rather than he could
like big soaring rhetoric of
right. He could have supported Medicare for All and Green New Deal, and if she was against that project, there are hundreds of people who hated that project and were going to vote for whoever was against that project.
Well, you also recently wrote about a similar insurgent progressive organizing in Delaware. Can you talk about the parallels there?
Yeah, and this one was more was similar to the traditional type that I mentioned at the top, but it flowed more organic. It flowed organically out of kind of activists in Delaware. In 2018, you might remember Carrie Evelyn Harris ran against Tom Carper, and a ton of people came together to volunteer for her campaign, and it was the first time that the kind of Delaware way, the Delaware machine, had really been challenged in any serious way. She lost by 20 points, but all of those people who worked for Harris, realized that there was a path to being able to challenge the the establishment in Delaware. If they, her entire campaign was only serious for about 6 weeks. Even, she hadn't raised a penny really until she kind of took off after Ocasio-Cortez won, and people were looking for another race that they could get behind. And so they figured if we start now, we could actually deliver on some of these wins. Then a woman named Jessica Rain, who, to your point, she had moved to Delaware 10 years ago. In Delaware, 10 years is like yesterday. People from Delaware,
they really stay in Delaware.
They oddly take an extraordinary amount of pride from being from Delaware. I grew up very close to Delaware, and I don't understand that pride, but no offense to, well, I guess that is offense toward people from Delaware, but whatever.
I'm not sure if I've ever been to Delaware. Maybe, I can't remember.
You've probably driven through it and paid the extraordinary toll for riding across, a square paved mile of Delaware.
And now I'm going to vote for Mr. Delaware. So
yes, that's right.
Okay.
So she actually teamed up with these down ballot candidates who had all gotten together to run and said, let's build a slate. Let's help each other with identifying voters, and your people make calls for me, my people make calls for you, and the slate did extraordinarily well. Out of 6, she lost to Chris Coons. Out of the 6 down ballot candidates who came together, 5 of them won their elections. One of them beat somebody who'd been in office since 1980.
Wow.
Another won by just 43 votes, showing who to become the first Muslim elected official, female elected official in Delaware. And the only one that lost is this up-and-coming activist, Kobe Owens, in Delaware, who lost a Wilmington City Council seat, but only because the mayor brought the entire machinery down upon him, launched an independent expenditure attacking him for supporting defunding the police, spent like $80,000 in a race that had about 1,000 votes.
It's an unfortunate total moniker, defund police.
Well, they really... Still, yeah, it was interesting because it probably didn't help him in this Wilmington city council race, where, I mean, it certainly probably helped him get some activists and some volunteers to support him, but because it's such a blunt phrase, and the mayor and his other opponents were able to kind of twist it to say, well, he doesn't want any police at all in Wilmington. And a lot of Wilmington residents are like, well, no. Like, we're not saying we don't want any police around here. There's a lot of crime in Wilmington. We want to be safe in the neighborhood. We don't want police abusing us and our loved ones, and we don't want them attacking us, but we also don't want them to completely disappear. And so there's some successful fear mongering that you can do that slogan plays into. There were all kinds of other shenanigans in that race. So that, they really had to pull out all the stops just to win that one of 6. So it was kind of an earthquake in Delaware. And if you can change the politics in Delaware, you can ultimately change corporate policy across the country, because the Delaware legislature is what sets the kind of rapacious corporate rules that we have now.
This is exciting. So seeing these insurgent candidates flipping seats at the local level, do you think this is likely to translate to flipping seats on the national level anytime soon?
Well, you're already seeing it. And
more. We want more.
In states across the country, people are paying, and Trump deserves a lot of the credit for this, voters are paying a lot more attention to who their Democrats are. Since he was elected in 2016, Trump really shocked people out of the kind of sleep that they were walking through. The Independent Democratic Conference in New York was really the first victim of that. For years you had this caucus of Democrats who were elected as Democrats,
pretty much Republicans,
and were literally caucusing and allying with Republicans in Albany, like out in the open. And because nobody,
how did they do that? They just wrote in on like the Democrat. You just vote all Democrat. Mm-hmm. You wrote down the line when you don't know exactly who's who.
Yeah, and then
so
when they get to
I should run
Albany,
as a Republican.
yeah, they would go to the Republicans and say, "Look, if you make me committee chairman, I will, I'll give you the majority in the Senate." And the Democrats at the top, like Cuomo, were quite fine with that, because then it'll, if you're in divided government,
you don't have to do anything.
Right, and the governor has all the power. You have to come to the governor to get anything that you want done. Whereas if you have unified control, then people are going to want things. Like, hey,
That is so fascinating, because I just said at the top of the show, I didn't know we were going here, that I think that Cuomo would have been a great candidate to fight against the strongman postures that Trump is putting forward. We talked about it in the news that he said, yesterday he said, "Oh, I might not leave." And whether he is or not, he's posturing in the same way that Mussolini postured, that some of these other strongmen, but specifically Mussolini postured, basically giving people the idea that he has some sort of secret power that we don't know about. And, I think Cuomo does the same thing. He has this ability to posture and be like, "Oh, if you're going to make your hand sanitizer, I'll show you what we're going to do. You just don't test me." He puts that ability forward. So I would have liked to see that. Although, that's very interesting.
Any opposition would be kind of interesting to see.
We're like, we'll vote for this wet rag against we'll take anything. Yeah, exactly.
So, but yes, so you first saw that in New York with the IDC getting wiped out by Democratic voters who started paying attention, being like, wait a minute, because in blue states, they want to do what they can to help. They're writing postcards. They're kicking in money everywhere they can, text messages into swing districts and races that matter on the blue-red scale. But in blue states, what they could do is take a look at who their own representative was, and that research led a ton of voters to conclude that this person was not actually representing their interests. And so across the country, you're seeing local legislators getting tossed out in favor of these more progressive challengers, and you see it at the national level as well, with Cori Bush, knocking out Lacy Clay, Jamal Bowman, Marie Newman, and Henry Cuellar, a very popular local congressman in Texas, almost losing to Jessica Cisneros in a race that nobody really thought was even close to winnable.
This is excellent. It's very heartening on a day when so much of the news is disheartening. Are these wins challenging the role of money in politics?
They certainly are, and what they're also doing is they're putting a cost on the money that's coming your way. And so Lacy Clay, for instance, faced a slew of attacks, down the stretch for taking Wall Street money and doing Wall Street's bidding on the Financial Services Committee. And the way it was framed, Obama was the president at the time, and Clay's actions were kind of undermining what Obama was doing, so that they had the added benefit that they could frame it additionally as not just doing Wall Street's bidding, but doing Wall Street's bidding with Republicans against President Obama. And that was rough for Clay to have the actual details of the corporate money that he had taken matched up next to what he had done for those corporations, packed into a 30-second ad that voters saw. Mm-hmm. So that does change the calculus in Washington, because for decades, congressmen like Clay could write and sign letters on behalf of particular industries, cash corporate PAC checks, and it would never become an issue back at home. Even when there was more local journalism being done, it just wasn't. Even if a story was written about it, it wasn't the kind of thing that would resonate with voters come election time. But the ability of these insurgents to raise money through small dollars, and also to get some outside help from ideological big money groups like happened with Clay, really changes the calculus for a politician when now industry comes and says, hey, can you sign our letter to this agency asking them to weaken this rule? It used to be, sure, I'll sign that, and thank you for the $5,000 PAC check. Now you think, is that $5,000 check worth what this might look like in a 30-second ad in a closed primary? And just thinking about that changes the calculus.
Ryan, thanks so much for joining us today. Ryan is the author of We've Got People. He's the Washington bureau chief for The Intercept. He's also the author of This Is Your Country on Drugs. You can follow Ryan on Twitter at Ryan Grim. Ryan, final thoughts before we end?
No final thoughts. Well, actually, one last final thought. Donald Trump claiming he's going to steal the election. He certainly is going to. There's no reason to think he wouldn't try, but it's also interesting to know that a lot of Democratic pollsters and strategists have been looking at data that shows that if voters think that the election is going to be rigged or stolen, then participation by Democrats in the election goes down. And so if Trump's people understand that as well, he has a curious incentive to be open about his attempts to rig and steal the election, because it could depress Democratic turnout. So Democrats, I think, need to be careful about.
That's why we see Michelle Obama coming out and saying it's not rigged. You need to get out there. Yeah, that's very interesting.
Right,
Thank you for bringing that up.
That's where that's coming from. Right.
Yeah, I said that on the show the other day. Like, you know, if they are going to rig it, then more of us need to come out and vote.
Right.
You know what? Why does that mean stay home? That means you got to go.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Follow Ryan on Twitter at Ryan Grim. You are watching ACT TV. Follow us on YouTube. I forgot where we are. It's Thursday. It's Friday, which is my Thursday. Well, no, it's Thursday, which is my Friday. Oh boy. I'm Juliana Forlano. Follow me on the Twitters. Thank you everyone for watching. I really appreciate it. It's been a difficult week, and I hope we have been useful to you as we continue this fight against fascism here in our country. Stay well, be well. On this next week, we've got Dean Baker, an economist, coming up. Maybe he can shed some light on the doom and gloom economist talk that's happening all over the internet, that every time I watch Richard Wolff's videos, I get a cascade of, it's not just that bad, it's 10 times worse, plant your own food, etc. So we'll ask him some questions about that. Also on the program coming up next week, we have, I forgot, what's one of my favorites? We're going to talk environment with Alexander Kaufman, climate reporter, and also Andrew Jarrell Jones, political commentator, who keeps it very real. Will be here with us on Tuesday. So you join us too. And I hope you live through the weekend. Oh my God, I've lost it. Thanks for joining. We'll see you next time.